I mean, come on, I can't even watch Netflix in peace anymore. A while ago I was watching The Three-Body Problem, and there's a scene, just one scene, that drove me up the wall because they mess with my favorite philosopher of all time. In this video, I will tell you which scene it is and what's wrong with it, so you can annoy all your friends who've watched the show, and who knows, maybe we can even file a class action lawsuit against Netflix to defend the honor of philosophers. My name is Enric, welcome back to Addicted to Philosophy, let's get started. Oh, and don't worry if you haven't seen the show because there are no spoilers. Okay, this scene is in episode 7.
Of the only season that exists, season 1. Maybe they should hurry up and release another instead of just buying up their competitors.
It's a short conversation between these two characters where Aristotle is mentioned.
Aristotle thought false humility was just as bad as arrogance.
Now, that's not wrong, it's acceptable. What made me crawl up the walls like the girl from The Exorcist is what the second character says next.
Aristotle thought that
But to be fair, the claim that, according to Aristotle, false humility is just as bad as arrogance is actually correct. It's not a literal quote, but the idea can more or less be found in Book 4 of the Nicomachean Ethics, where Aristotle discusses several virtues as the mean between two extremes, excess and deficiency. This way, there's a virtue that consists in valuing yourself correctly. You are aware of your gifts and you stand up for them, but at the same time, you recognize your own limitations. You have some humility. You can miss this mark by overestimating yourself. Your real value is, let's say, down here, but you place yourself 30 floors higher. That's arrogance, or what Aristotle calls vanity. But you can also miss the mean by deficiency, undervaluing yourself and constantly selling yourself short. That may be what this character is referring to with false humility, though Aristotle calls it little-mindedness. The little-minded man, though he deserves good things, deprives himself of that which he deserves, and so seems to be the worse for not claiming these good things and for misjudging himself. But vain men are fools as well as ignorant of themselves, and make this plain to all the world, for they undertake honorable offices for which they are unfit, and presently stand convicted of incapacity.
See? That's what happens to you. Not me, I'm way too intelligent.
Both arrogance and false humility are vices, and therefore things to be avoided, because they involve a mismatch between who you really are and how you perceive or present yourself. So, on that front, well done, Netflix. Although, strictly speaking, Aristotle actually says that little-mindedness, false humility, is farther from the mean than arrogance, because it is commoner and worse. But fine, let's let that slide, because there's no need to get picky. But now let's move on to the second character's reply, and here, honestly, I'd better keep my mouth shut. But before that, give this video a big like if you're enjoying it. It really helps me reach more people. Thanks a lot, and let's keep going.
Aristotle thought false humility was just as bad as arrogance.
Aristotle thought that rocks fell down instead of up because they loved the ground.
Okay, I'm going to calm down and be as charitable as possible.
Según Aristóteles, las piedras caían hacia abajo porque les gustaba el suelo.
There is a grain of truth in this idea, and we'll see it, but it's twisted so badly that it turns into a pure caricature of what Aristotle actually thought. What is true is that Aristotle held that every object has a natural place towards which it is naturally inclined. Fire's natural place, for example, was the heavens, which is why fire or heat tends upward. The natural place of heavy things, by contrast, was the center of the universe, which is why stones, when left alone, fall downward towards the ground. That's where they are naturally oriented to. And yes, this theory of a natural place is obsolete and incorrect. The problem is that nowhere, and I repeat, nowhere, does Aristotle attribute likes, preferences, desires, love, emotions, or a mind to inanimate objects. Quite the opposite. To be fair, Netflix didn't completely pull these out of thin air. What we are dealing with is a very common caricature of Aristotle's thought, one that has taken many forms throughout history. It's the old idea that Aristotle's philosophy falls into a kind of panvitalism, attributing life and conscious desire to all objects without exception. Hobbes, for example, already mocked the Aristotelians of his time, saying they spoke as if stones and metals had a desire or could discern the place they would be at, as man does. But at least Hobbes says they spoke as if stone had desires. He doesn't actually attribute that belief to them, only something loosely analogous.
Thomas Hobbes, my favorite philosopher.
But if we jump to the last century, we run into Burrus Frederick Skinner. Honestly, what a name, the poor guy, his parents must have hated him. Anyway, in 1976, this man writes, this time very bluntly, that Aristotle argued that a falling object accelerated because it grew more jubilant as it found itself nearer home. Now this is much closer to the quote we find in that Netflix episode. An impressive free reinterpretation of Aristotelian thought, for which, instead of a direct reference to Aristotle's work, as one would expect, we are uncritically sent to Herbert Butterfield's 1965 book, The Origins of Modern Science. And if we actually go and read it, we find the exact same idea. They, referring to the Aristotelians, used Aristotle's argument that the falling body moved more jubilantly every moment because it found itself nearer home. And surprise, surprise, there's no quotation from Aristotle, not even a single reference, so the reader can check it for themselves. Which is perfectly normal, because I'm convinced that if someone actually went through the entire Aristotelian corpus looking for this quote, they wouldn't find it. Of course, it's always tricky to say this with 100% certainty. Aristotle's corpus is enormous, and proving that he never said something would require reading everything exhaustively. But truly, as far as I know, nowhere in the surviving Aristotelian works does Aristotle literally and not metaphorically attribute conscious attitudes to inanimate objects. On the contrary, you constantly find statements saying exactly the opposite. For example, in the Metaphysics, he says that inanimate objects do exhibit natural dispositions, meaning they are inclined to do certain things, like move towards their natural place, but that they perform these functions unconsciously, as the fire when it burns. A stone falls to the ground because that's where its nature inclines it, but it does so without knowing what it's doing, what's happening, or that it's supposedly getting closer to home. And when we turn to the physics, where he discusses the motion of heavy and light objects, he's quick to emphasize the following. We cannot say that such objects, when moving naturally, move themselves, for this is proper to animals that have life. Which shows just how false this widespread idea is that Aristotle attributed life and even intelligence to all natural things. And as if that weren't enough, he doesn't hesitate to criticize his predecessors, who had attributed soul and therefore life even to the elements, which he considers utterly irrational. To describe fire or air as living creatures is too improbable. So you simply can't criticize Aristotle for blurring the line between the living and the inanimate by attributing emotions, likes, or desires to stones. The theory of natural place is simply one expression of his teleology, the idea that every natural object had an end, a telos, toward which it is naturally oriented. This orientation towards an end isn't necessarily tied to the ability to deliberate or to have conscious preferences or desires. That's only the case in beings capable of perception and reasoning. In all other cases, it's a teleology and orientation without phenomenology, a kind of natural directedness that requires no consciousness, desires, or mind at all. An idea that, again, you are free to find as wrong as you like, that's fine, but which is at the very least more interesting and sophisticated than the naive panpsychism or panvitalism so often attributed to him. So, did Aristotle say many wrong things? Yes, absolutely. But that stones fall downward because they love the ground was not one of them. But hey, no big deal, the history of philosophy is full of myths like this, and it's very easy to fall for them. I myself realized not long ago that I'd swallowed a massive lie about one of the greatest philosophers of all time. And the worst part is I'd repeated it dozens of times before, but I have already fixed it in this video right here, so you can learn about it and never get fooled again. I will see you there, thanks a lot, and above all, don't forget to think.